the report card is also extremely valuable for telling information about what your student lacks and what their benefits are. That way you can teach them at home as well in your own unique way. Because if they keep saying, oh yeah, A, Johnny had a great time, Johnny is very good at shapes, Johnny knows how to do math, and Johnny does not know how to read, even though it says reading's at an A, because the teacher just simply didn't care and just put an A down because it's just a general spectrum.
Hi friends and family, and welcome back to Pam and the Purple Couch podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what does the neurodivergent classroom truly look like. Whether you're in a private school or a public school, or even if you're homeschooling, what should that environment contain? What should your child have in order to be successful in the classroom? So Loke, let's talk about that. What should a neurodivergent classroom have? We've been in our school, which was built for neurodivergent students, and you've been in schools that have not.
Yes.
So today, I really want to get to the parent's view, the caregiver view of when they come in to tour a school. If they come in to look at the classroom, what should they be looking for? What are some signs of a good facility for their child? Especially as we are getting back into the school season. In Florida, August schools start.
Yes.
But for a lot of our other states, they don't go back to school until September.
Yes.
So they have the opportunity now to be visiting classrooms, visiting schools, and trying to make the best decision for their kids. So today, what I want to do is I want to give them some tips and tricks of what do you look at in that classroom? What should the teacher have experienced? What are some key words that when you're filtering through the intake process or the review, hey, I'm coming in to do a review of your school and whether or not this is the right place for my kid. What would you look at because you've been there? I can talk about the clinical side and the academic side, but being that you went through the system, you went to private school, you went to public school, and then you went to Puzzle Box, which is for neurodivergent, and Legacy High. So from your standpoint, what is one of the first things an elementary or preschool mom and dad should be looking for?
I don't want to sound corny when I say it, but I think it's mostly around the fact that you need to find a school that dedicates around the child, has a system that dedicates it for the child and not for the group. Because considering if your child has some sort of special needs, similar to an allergy or something, then you need to have something that would dedicate time and respect that student rather than ignoring it, such as how other schools treat it sometimes.
So when you're saying that, I think about how we looked at preschools originally. Especially because potty training is a big deal in preschools.
Yes.
And most preschools nowadays
are afraid to go to the potty because that's going to cause a fit for some, children. Because
exactly.
Quite literally, we've had multiple students who are just kindergartners that are not willing to go to the bathroom because their parents were afraid of doing it. And now their teachers are afraid of doing it. So
Correct.
Who's actually going to teach them at all in the first place?
So in our early intervention clinic, we see that a lot. And it's not even some neurotypical. We've had families call that are how can I put it? Normal is such a cliche word. But children that would not have been diagnosed with any delays.
Yes.
But the parents are clueless. They have no idea how do they even start potty training. And in preschools, now it is a prerequisite.
Yes.
So not daycare centers. You would think daycare centers would be working with the families, but like you mentioned.
Again, they don't work around the student, they work around the group. No matter how small or how big it is, it's mostly just sort of a centered demographic.
Yes, because for our neurodivergent children, potty training can be very scary.
Yes.
So when you say looking at the child, that's the first time that parents start to deal with prerequisites of skill sets that the children should have before entering the facility.
Yes.
So where do they learn it then? So what you want to look for is if you have a preschool student, if you have someone, that is in that 3 to 4 year old age, and potty training is difficult, you want to ask, do you have a potty training program? A lot of preschools have a prerequisite for it, but you can actually ask them if they have a potty training program where they have staff that are designated, that have specialized in walking kids through the potty training process. Even for our children in our early intervention clinic, we have a system that we've been using for over a decade that within 5 days we can have any child potty trained. But it takes dedication and commitment to not just the process, but the process at home too. So parents, make sure that you are on the same page as your preschool.
On the topic of being on the same page as the preschool, I think another thing that's generally lacking in both non-neurodivergent or special needs children towards any other student that has like special needs is that I feel like there's a lack, like this is mostly not even dedicated towards high schools, this is mostly dedicated towards younger schools, preschools, kindergartners and such. But I think there's a lack of communication between the student, the teacher, and the parent, because if the student is lacking on something and the teacher is focusing on the group as a whole,
yes,
and they try to make the student catch up, and I'm trying to think of a word to say this. What will the parent have to come to gain to say, what has Johnny learned?
All right, families, we'll be right back after this special message. Are you looking for an alternative to public school? Puzzle Box Academy is your home, where every child is looked at as an individual. Come to Puzzle Box Academy, take your tour today, and you will see the difference. Puzzle Box Academy at www.puzzleboxacademy.com. And now, back to the Purple Couch Podcast. So this works really good. I love this topic because we've gone from preschool and now we can go into kindergarten and first grade. First grade especially, because that's when teachers start to see deficits in the student. So parents, now we're talking about elementary school. What should you be looking for if you have a neurodivergent student? So walking into the classroom, you want to see, is the classroom too overstimulated? When Loki is talking about Johnny, when we're specifically looking for that student, you want to look at the environment.
Yes.
Okay? So remember that our environment, even when you're nonverbal as a child, really has such a huge impact on their daily structure. So you want to look at the classroom. Is it too stimulating for your child? Speak to the teacher about that. Hey, my kid, little Johnny, is just his ADHD. He can't focus right now, so he is all over the place. That's not a hindrance. That is a benefit if you actually look in another 10 years. Why? Because that's a great multitasker in the making. But what you have to do is still condition the environment for your child. So you need to have a conversation with the teacher and say, hey, is there any special placement that my child can sit? Is there an area that you have as a calm down area? Because this may be a little too stimulating, especially teachers in first grade that are looking at 20 to 25 kids in the classroom.
Again, I'd also like to say this. I don't know if this is really a gear switch from environment, from the parent's perspective to the teacher's perspective, but I want to focus on the teachers as well, because you all also had an episode about this with Miss Megan. The report card is also extremely valuable for telling information about what your student lacks and what their benefits are. That way you can teach them at home as well in your own unique way.
Correct.
Because if they keep saying, oh yeah, A, Johnny had a great time, Johnny is very good at shapes, Johnny knows how to do math, and Johnny does not know how to read, even though it says reading's at an A, because the teacher just simply didn't care and just put an A down because it's just a general spectrum.
Absolutely. So that would be another thing that you would ask for, parents. When you're taking and doing a tour of a school, if you're doing a tour of a public or private school. So again, let me make a little information share here for you. Even if you are attending a public school, you have the right as a parent to come tour the school, see the environment your child is going to be in. They may not like your request, but you have the right as the parent to tell the principal, tell the vice principal, tell the administrator when you're coming to the school that I'd like to set up a time that I can tour the facility. I'd like to be able to see the classroom placement that my child may be in. I'd like to see what the gym looks like, what the lunchroom looks like. Because again, we're going to environment. But the report card dictates on how that child is going to be analyzed in the classroom. And every report card in each different school is slightly different. They may have the same English, language arts, reading, math, social studies, science, then art, physical education. How did the child do? Independent learning. Yes, sir?
But the teacher is still going to be different each class. The teacher is still going to have a different opinion on how they teach the students individually and as a group. Someone may have great skills teaching in a group, but once Johnny has a problem, the teacher fumbles because they only know how to teach in a group. And I'm not saying that's like a negative.
No.
Teaching in a group is such a great skill to have as a teacher, but that's when we need like one-on-ones, ABAs, like
absolutely
teachers like that who are willing to help the student get back on track and do it in their pace. Because if you have a student that's too fast, then they're going to be upset that they have to stick with everybody else. But if you have a student that's too slow, that's going to be worse when they feel behind and everything. And especially once you get up to 3rd grade or 4th grade, when they start having that sentience to realize, wait, everybody is doing much better than me. How do I like develop? And the teacher says, oh yeah, no, just simply study harder. And that's not really good advice.
No.
Because studying is in itself a very finite thing, even though that sounds very constricting.
Okay, so give me a little bit to unpack everything you said there.
Yes. Yeah.
So the number one key that you're talking about is parents talk to the instructor. Whether it's the teacher, whether it's the administrator, you need to find out what is the teaching methodologies that they're putting in the classroom. Every district has a teaching guideline. Every state has got matrix that we have to meet in the education sector. Private schools in the state of Florida are exempt from those matrices. So if you're in Florida, you definitely want to ask, well, are you adhering to the Florida code? Are you adhering to the matrix that the Florida Department of Education has adhered? Because private schools are not required to follow that. So in Florida, there's a lot of leeway with private schools. So you want to know what is their teaching methodologies. Now, what Loki is pinpointing on is, do you do individual coaching and teaching to the student, or is it all group instruction? Why? Because if you have a neurodivergent child, like he is stating, that may need more hand over hand, may need more isolated instruction, and the teacher is teaching at one pace to the group,
because they
may not even have the know-how.
Yeah.
This is where IEPs come in, and I know we've had a podcast about that. We'll have more, because individual education plans are very critical. But it's understanding your student, your child, and parents. Let me be the first one to say, from a generation that grew up, that you don't question the teacher. You don't question the doctor, you don't question the teacher. That time is way gone now. You need to advocate for your child, especially, like I said, because public school currently is 22 to 25 kids to one teacher. So if you do have a student that gets behind, what is the plan for them to get back on track? So where are you going to pull my student if they need more of remedial education? So is there something set up? Is there a structure set up? Do you have within the class rotation one-on-one time that you'll be able to give individualized attention to the student?
Where are the accommodations in general?
Correct. And that's another pinpoint for us to get into here. We had this conversation in my early intervention clinic just yesterday. At our school, at Puzzle Box, every day is full of accommodations. If we were to sit down and write an IEP for every student that we have, it would be between 30 to 50 pages long, because we take a holistic approach to the child. Meaning, from the time that child wakes up, they're already in the learning method. Why? Because whatever happens at home, they're going to bring it into the school. So you want to find a school that is with you as the parent all the way, not just once that kid gets to school. You want to be able to build the relationship with the school, to be able to come to the administrator and say, hey, Loki didn't sleep last night. Loki's had an hour of sleep, and work together as a team. So
what do you do?
Correct. In our school, if that happened, if a parent came in and said, hey, Miss Jess, I just want to let you know Loki, he had a really rough night sleeping.
Yes.
What we would do then at that point, because we're a year-round school, we have more academic days in the calendar, we would then approach, okay, well, we know Loki enjoys science. We know that Loki's trigger is doing handwriting.
Yes.
So you want to find an education system
that adapts
correct,
to the student.
And knows the child.
Yes, and that's why parent-to-teacher communication is such a valuable thing, because if the teacher doesn't give the parent information about what the student has done, then the parent will just not care and just assume that he's doing fine at school.
Correct.
In reality, he's not. However, if the parent doesn't give the teacher the information, then that's going to be the same way around at the school.
Absolutely. Well, or here's another one that we have to think about. Ask about homework, parents. I cannot tell you the amount of coaching that I've had to do to parents that are in crisis because the children are coming home with 2 to 3 hours of homework. Okay, guys, take a mindset shift. We have to really think about the student being in work.
Yes.
When they're in school, that is their work environment. So as adults, if somebody came to us after working an 8-hour shift and told us to put another 2 to 3 hours at home in, we would be asking for overtime. So how do our students ask for that? So we have to also be able to advocate for our students. Homework is not a requirement. And you as the parent have the role to go into the teacher and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know. By the time Loki got home last night, he was in no place to do homework. So I, as the parent, told him not to do it.
I also like to say...
Well, think about tension real quick, Loki. I'm cutting you off here because if we go back to the time when you were in public school, when you were one of those students that came home with 2 to 3 hours, do you remember the burnout?
Yes, I do remember the burnout.
Do you remember about the arguments between you and I, the tension?
Yeah, because I was stressed out and not in a good mood. Because you know the reason why I was not in a good mood? Because the homework in public schools is sometimes not even a punishment for not doing the work. Sometimes homework is just simply required.
Yes.
And that is not good, because what do you mean I get done with all the work that I needed to and I get it done quickly, but yet I still have to do homework for no apparent reason at all when I still could have done it at the school?
Yes. Well, just like note taking. Now that we've gone through preschool and elementary, the biggest thing that I want to give to parents, whether you're up north and you have junior high or here in the central area where we have middle schools now, and then you go into senior high. Well, in that area, not only are you dealing with puberty, changes in maturity going on, now you're added this additional stress, and a lot of times, have students even been taught how to handle that pressure? So these are all things that you should be taking into account when we start looking at where is the best placement for my child. Especially in the United States, where we've got this wonderful ability now to do school of choice and this voucher program that's going to be now not just in Florida, but in multiple states throughout the United States. And as parents start to understand that they do have more choices, you need to educate yourself so that when your child doesn't have that voice, you have the ability to speak up for them. So we've gone through preschool. We've gone through elementary school, and again, it's getting to know the teacher, have those discussions, visit the classroom, look at the environment the student will be in.
Advocate so that way your student can adapt.
Yes, and there's one that we have not looked at, is the lunchroom.
I thought we were going to save that for high school, but if you want, we could talk about that right now.
Well, as we're wrapping up this episode, I want to talk about those type of extracurricular rooms because they get missed.
Yes.
Most incidences happen not in the classroom, but in those areas of the school that most parents neglect to go tour.
Yeah.
So what most parents don't realize is that when we look at ratios of student to teacher, the age of 5, we're looking at a 25-to-1. Now, when you take students at lunchtime, most of the time the teachers are having lunch too. So then you have up to 300 students in a cafeteria. Can you imagine what the noise sounds like? So you need to look at not just the classroom. You need to look at all the environmental factors that your student is going to be placed in. What does the outside playground look like? If your student's an eloper, is there a fence? Is there adequate supervision outside on the playground? When you look at the lunchroom, if you have a student that has lots of intolerances, how do they handle cross-food contamination? And who is watching and monitoring those kids in the lunchroom? These are all things that we have to take and look at when we start thinking about what is the best placement of our student.
Yep.
So as we wrap up today, our new theme, you got to give our parents one tip and trick as you get ready to leave the podcast.
Yes.
So what is your tip and trick to our parents today?
I think a general tip and trick is, again, what Mom said, is just generally have advocation towards your student. That way they can adapt more into the setting that they can choose to be in. Because if you give the teacher, or if you're the teacher, the parent, the information that you need, then they can have a much better time influencing what happened over there into over here.
I like that. I think that's a great tip.
I think just generally having better transition periods to make sure that the kid is still learning basic lessons to go into higher classes and grades
Correct.
is valuable, because if parents or teachers keep doing this thing where they just ignore the child, it's going to end up in a state where they say, oh yeah, everything's fine, until you have that one teacher that just says, it's not fine. What is everybody else thinking?
Yep.
How did the student get into this grade? And then they get moved down a grade, and then cycle repeats.
Yes. So for me, my tip to all of our families would be find a home where your student belongs. You have so many choices today, whether it's private school or whether it's public school. What I can tell you is that over the last decade, the thing that has stood out for Puzzle Box and for Legacy High School is the fact that our students make real friends. They make real friends because they have a sense of belonging. And they have a sense of belonging because we look at the whole child. Like I said, from the parent when they wake up, to the time that they leave, to how they slept. Find a school that fits you and your family's lifestyle. We have so many choices, whether it's online, public, private. New types of schools are popping up, these little micro schools for homeschoolers. But find a place where your family feels like they've met their own family. That would be my advice to all of you. So, from our couch to yours, I want you all to come back next time. And remember, hit the like button, subscribe. Don't miss any of these episodes so that you can fill your toolbox, so that you can advocate for your student. Until next time, come on back to Pam and the Purple Couch Podcast. Bye, guys.